This is the Superpowered Mind podcast for inquiring individuals who are tired of the struggle for peace, happiness, and clarity. I'm Claire Diamond, ready to help you explore the principles of the mind, the self, and reality to unlock ultimate mental freedom. This podcast is the one to listen to if you're ready to experience the capabilities of the superpowered mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our episode on the role of psychology in this conversation. And it's really, I think, where psychology as a discipline, as an academic subject, as a clinical subject, could be playing such an enormous role in this understanding of what we are. And yet it's falling short. And I think the fact that it's falling short is contributing to the mental health crisis that we are finding ourselves in. I'd just like to read a few paragraphs from my book, Sane. Over the last 20 years, human capability, exploration, and discovery has transformed beyond recognition. We've found water ice on the moon, the promise of a cure for HIV/AIDS, and how to grow human organs from stem cells. We've proven the existence of dark matter and completed the sequencing of the human genome. We've exited the solar system, determined the age of the universe, and can have live video conversations with anyone on the planet. Yet when it comes to mental health, in that same 20-year period, antidepressant use in the US has risen 400%, with 11% of all people in the US over 12 years old now taking the medication. In the UK, deaths from alcohol misuse have doubled, and 25% of people in Europe now suffer from depression or anxiety. Worldwide, depression is now the number one cause of disability and the major contributor to the burden of suicide and heart disease. A suicide occurs every 40 seconds and is the second leading cause of death globally for 15 to 29-year-olds. 300 million people suffer from anxiety, and $8 billion a year are spent on mental health medication. So there is something going wrong, isn't there? It shouldn't be the case that human body minds need medication to live and flourish. So what's going on? What is psychology? Let's start with that. Well, it comes from two Greek words, psyche meaning mind, soul, or spirit, and logos meaning discourse or to study or to learn. So it's the study of the mind, or the spirit. And what I think is really interesting is when we look at the conversation we're in about reality and the identity and the experience of being, what we can see, I think, is two areas where modern psychology has one area where it's stopped short, where it hasn't gone far enough, and that has a knock-on effect. It creates a second area which opens up an enormous endeavor, an unfulfillable endeavor that is completely mistaken and is only happening because of that initial falling short. So let's look at what's going on. So the first part of psychology is to understand the mind. What is it? What is this experience of being? What am I? Really? What am I? What is the mind creating? What's actually real? And what has happened is that psychology has embarked on that quest to understand the mind, but in the vast majority of courses and institutions and organizations and therapists, that quest hasn't extended to actually investigating what the I is. The I is like this holy, protected, sacred, hidden thing that can't even be looked at. Why? It's bemusing, really, when we consider that the I, that sense of what I am, It's so laden, it's so full of all the beliefs, all the learning, all this understanding of what I am, jam-packed into that single letter word, I, and yet that's not questioned. So we might have psychotherapy, for example, and it will be all about behavior or the mental experience, the mind, and what's going on, what my feelings are, what my responses, my reactions are. But it doesn't question what the I is that is having that experience. And until that I is questioned, psychology is far, very, very far from doing its job. Because the relationship between that me, the I that I believe myself to be, that looks to be sacrosanct and set in stone and unquestionable, that I is the same as the reality that is experienced. It's made from the same conditioning. And the I that I believe myself to be, that believes it's talking now, that believes it's making these things happen, that believes it's having this emotional experience. What really is that I? What is it? Because the more we look at it, the more it becomes clear that all that I really is attention. And all the mind really is either pure attention, observing, or it's an engagement in creation or an engagement in destruction, which is analysis and breaking things down and discarding what's irrelevant. So the mind is doing these things, but what am I in the middle of all of that? So as long as the I isn't questioned, as long as it looks like what I am is the decider, that I have free will, that I have free choice, that I'm the separate entity, distinct from this reality as it appears, that is making all of this happen. As long as that's believed, then the whole of psychology is based around that unquestioned premise and everything that unquestioned premise implies. And now we come into our second area where when that I is unquestioned, all intervention then is about trying to secure that I, trying to make sure that the experience of being doesn't threaten that I, doesn't encroach on the identity, doesn't make sure that the emotions are exactly what that I wants. And so that's what psychology has become. It's become, first of all, the unquestioning of what we really are, not questioning that at all. And then secondly, because it hasn't questioned that, it's predetermined now to go down the route of securing that identity. And that's what has created this total catastrophe of mental health. And it's what is leading to young children believing that their experience of being can come from asserting and protecting an identity, even to the extent of taking puberty blockers or having surgery to mutilate the body to try to secure that sense of being, that sense of identity. And it can't ever happen because that identity, the I, doesn't exist in the way it appears to. So psychology, any practice or research that doesn't look into what the identity is and what reality is as a starting point is just continuing the confusion. And because the confusion is continued, it means that all of us are being sent down this route of, yes, if your experience of being is vulnerable, if it's insecure, if it's feeling under threat, then yes, of course, there's something wrong and you need to leave this job or report that person or take this medication. Of course that's going to happen, because the whole focus of mental health is on securing that sense of me as an individual separate entity, and that entity, everything that it believes isn't questioned. That's just what I am, and that has to be secured. So this is really the problem that we're facing as a world, really. And everything that we're doing at the moment seems to be making it worse. The absolute focus on feelings and the attempt to control how that identity is held and secured, and the experience that it relates to, all of it is sending, well, the pharmaceutical industry, the psychological support practices, schools, social media, everything is involved in this total misunderstanding that the identity can be secured. It's absolute chaos, because it really doesn't exist. It's a construct of mind. And we know that, like, even just this slight investigation right now, how is listening happening? How is listening happening? Who is doing the listening? Where is it taking place? It's not being controlled by an identity. It's just happening. And it's being observed. The sound is being heard, it's being observed, but how is that sound being translated into an experience? The identity isn't doing it. And the more human beings use this incredible human intelligence to genuinely question, what actually are we? And to follow that question so deeply through to the recognition that I can't be what I think I am. And what I am isn't controlling experience. It isn't controlling emotions. It isn't controlling behavior. All of that is just happening. It's just arising. Then as we move deeper into that exploration, what happens is it becomes immensely fascinating. It becomes the only genuinely interesting question, really, because it's at the heart of everything. What am I, and what is reality? And as the attention moves deeper into that, it becomes very clear that this identity that I think I am, that has to be protected, is just a creation of beliefs. And now everything is different, because with that no longer there as something that has to absorb all the attention, all the resources, we start to realize how incredibly narcissistic we become, so innocently, but from this total misunderstanding that this I has to be protected at all costs. And really that I, that sort of psychological I, that conceptual I that is representative of what I am, it literally doesn't exist. And so all of the therapy, the medication, the interventions to try to secure that I are completely unnecessary. And not just unnecessary, they are creating harm. Iatrogenic is a really good word in this case. It means the healing creates the harm. And that is what is happening when psychological interventions are trying to secure something that doesn't even exist. And in that process are putting all of the attention, all of the focus and the effort onto trying to control an experience of being that is uncontrollable, and really is the most fascinating aspect of existence. To see how reality appears and what it reveals about what is currently being believed, what's currently being held onto or protected, is the greatest gift for the human mind. It's the perfection of the design, genuinely. And these interventions are actually destroying the mind's ability to not even to heal itself, but to return itself to reality. That's the inbuilt mechanism. Stress and that sort of feeling of defense of this identity is saying, okay, this is interesting here. This is interesting. There's something under threat now that actually doesn't exist. Let's see what's going on. But instead, that stress and those threats are taken as something that has to be therapied away or medicalized away. And so the mechanism is being disrupted. And psychology should be leading the way with this. I did my undergraduate degree was psychology, with a year studying it in Padua University, and it was so wasted on me at that age, that young age. But I feel like everything I've done since is returning to that, and really seeing how powerful psychology can be when it's an understanding of the mind, of that sense of identity at the very heart of it, of where behaviors come from, because they're certainly not coming from any free will of that imagined separate entity. Then we start really seeing patterns and reactions and responses from the understanding there is no one doing them. That's the huge difference. They're just happening. There is no independent decider choosing to make those happen. That would revolutionize mental health across the world for all of us as individual psychologists ourselves, because there's nothing more interesting than what is going on as a fundamental origin of experience. Yeah. So everyone who's here listening to this podcast, this is what we're doing. We're changing the whole way mental health is understood. And we are reversing that iatrogenic damage that has been done by professions that don't go far enough in the question, and then in trying to heal and help are actually creating harm. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Lots of love. Bye. Thank you for listening to Superpowered Mind with me, Claire Diamond. If you want extra support in the exploration of your mind, download our exclusive subliminal recording, especially for podcast listeners, on bit.ly/podcast subliminal.